Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of the Lions Grid. I am your host Kevin Marheine, joined today by my co-host Mr. Joseph Wilmot. Joe, it's another week, another new episode of the Lion Grid. This brings us up to episode 11 for the season, and today we're going to be taking a look back at the game between the Lions and the Houston Texans. So that was the second preseason game, and the Lions were unfortunately not able to come out victorious in this game either, but there were some good things. They were really awful the first week. Still not a lot of great things, but there were some moments where they looked halfway decent, and we'll sort of hop into that and talk about our thoughts there. But I think obviously the big thing to note, at least for me, is that week two, still no Matt Stafford. I know right now they're wanting to rest him, give him time to make sure that he's ready to go for the season. But here we are 2 weeks into the preseason, and have yet to see him get any game time in. So, Joe, obviously Matt Stafford's been in the league for a while. Do you need to see him play this preseason to feel comfortable with him heading into the season, or are you on board with Matt Patricia's logic of seeming to give him as much rest as he needs to be ready for the regular season?
No rest for the wicked. You gotta get Stafford out there in game three. It's the dress rehearsal. You gotta get the starters out there. Maybe not 3/4, but maybe the first half. Get half of a football game in and see how you do. Try to win the first half. I mean, that should be an important step. Because when you start off the regular season, if you can win the first half, that gives you confidence going into the second half. And all you have to do is maintain the lead and keep putting the pressure on the other team to make plays once you already got the lead. So, yeah, I'd like to see Stafford play. I'm not a fan of just sitting him and letting him think that he's some sort of fragile quarterback that can't be touched. Otherwise, they're going to lose, because if he just sits all preseason, chances are he's going to get injured on the first play. He goes in there in the regular season. You can't live in fear. You got to get your players out there, and you got to get them active and involved with a competitive type of scenario. I understand that game 3, I think it's against, Buffalo?
Yep, Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, Buffalo. So Buffalo's going to be playing their starters, and they're poised to have, a subpar season is what I'm thinking. So, you want to go out there and you want to gain some confidence with your starters and, put up some points on them and execute some of the things you've been working on in training camp.
Certainly, and just want to take a moment to acknowledge Kartik there in the chat, who is here watching us live for his last video before he heads back to Australia. So Kartik, thanks for tuning in. But Joe, I think you hit on a lot of good points there. Obviously in today's preseason, they do a lot of joint practices and things like that. So there's a chance for you to get exposure with the teams without actually playing in the game. But that being said, those are still like scripted, controlled moments. So even though you're going up against another team, Stafford isn't seeing the same type of pressure. He's not taking the same type of hits that he would be in regular game action. So, I think there's definitely value in giving him time to make sure that he's healthy going into the season. But at the same time, I'm with you. I want to see him at least play a little bit here in this dress rehearsal game, because, there is no substitute for that game action. Like, until you start getting hit and things like that you can't. The only way to prepare for that is to have it happen, because in practice, even if you're taking hits, again, it's a controlled situation. In games, everything happens in real time, and it can be kind of fluky. And there's, we see it every year. There's a ton of injuries and things like that can happen. So if you're not ready, if you're unprepared to be taking hits and things like that, Stafford's a tough guy, but I just want to see him out there. Also, selfishly, I want to see what this offense is going to look like. Stafford, we know what we have with Stafford, but there's a lot of new parts with this offense. Obviously, with Galladay and Jones Jr., that part of the offense hasn't changed much, but Frank Ragnow's moved over to center. So how is that exchange between Stafford and Ragnow going to go? You have T.J. Hawkinson in as the tight end. We got to see a little bit of him in this game against the Texans. He had a nice catch and run, but overall, I think there's a lot there. There's been a lot of changes, and it'd be nice to get to see that sort of dress rehearsal to see how everything's going to go. So I'm in the same boat with you. Obviously our backup QB situation isn't great, and we'll talk about that as we talk about the game. But
well, I wanted to talk about that. What's his name? Josh Johnson?
Yep, Josh Johnson.
Yeah, he's played for 13 other NFL teams. He's a veteran. I've never seen him really play, but he seemed to have a fast throwing motion. Kind of had some heat on the ball when he threw it. Kind of inaccurate. Not really that mobile, but got some yards that helped the offense move. He's a subpar backup quarterback, but he was still playing.
DeAndre Hopkins was the motion man. Watson looking that direction, and instead finds Darren Fells, who's had a tremendous camp. And Darren Fells, perhaps a starting role on Monday night against New Orleans when the season begins. Off play action, Hopkins wide open, another first down. Empty backfield on first down for Deshaun Watson. Four-man pressure from the Lions to Carter on the sideline, out of bounds.
I just think what I've seen
Watson on first down. Just a three-man rush this time.
Excellent protection.
Watson surveying the field, has to get rid of it. Coming back for it is Carter, and a first down to the 14. Smith, Carter, and Hopkins to the top of the screen. On third down, Watson with time. Now the pocket collapsing. Watson using his wheels. Watson with the pump, lunging, and is just short. It's Higdon up the middle with flags down in the end zone, and Higdon down to the 3. If it stands, it's a first down.
Try to go for the fade in the corner.
So you shouldn't weigh too heavily on the
Looking for Hopkins. Hopkins cannot pull it in.
I think the
Darius Slay
in preseason is
Got a nice slant here for number 14. You got to, if he can
Texans
clear
did
underneath.
a pretty interesting
Good,
thing
got
where
it.
They had
Watson
Watson
looking left instead for Hopkins. Touchdown Texans.
Out there for the first drive, and they got that touchdown, and after they scored, they
Four, not as good,
I
but
think
he's got the same thing that
it's two parts.
Watson
Obviously,
does.
you want to
On
make
second and
sure
5, pressure, and the ball's out.
Is ready to go.
Whitney
But then
Merciless
also,
jarred it loose from Josh Johnson. It's covered by the Lions. Johnson on third.
If your stars do get
From the goal line to the sideline, incomplete. On
This is
3rd and 6 at the
preseason is
45.
grounds for it. And obviously you want to try and make a few there without
Webb, nice fingertip grab by DeAndre Carter.
So in that
Texans
regard, it
lose
was
a
very
challenge and a
successful week
timeout,
for
and it's
the
3rd
Lions.
down
Nobody
and
got hurt in
6
the game, so,
at the 31-yard line. Webb
so far
with protection, now going to have to scramble. Webb throwing on the run. Vincent Smith coming back for it. Did he get both feet in? He did not. Last week in Green Bay, 2 for 2 overall last week in the field goal department, and Fairbairn drills it.
It'd definitely be a shame to
And on
see
first down,
something happen there.
Johnson off play action, going up top. One-on-one coverage down the sideline, and there's a flag.
looks like it's press man, and then he bails out the last second. The little push there, you can see at the end, the clear violation.
Third-round pick out of Maryland, picking
number 30.
up that ball and
Ball will be
scoring.
advanced to the spot of the foul. Automatic.
He's definitely one of the guys that we've mentioned to keep an eye on. He's a third-round pick.
Four-man pressure for the Texans. Swing pass to Johnson, and Johnson stopped just shy of the first down. Like that length, 49 for Prater. And Prater's kick.
That third string spot moving forward. So, the free safety spot moving forward. So, definitely an interesting thing. And it'll be interesting to see how things progress. But they're, Will Harris's scoop and score, nice. The offensive line, particularly the backups, they were playing much better. That first week, David Fales was constantly getting hit, struggling to have time to throw the ball. This week, they kept him upright, gave him some protection, and he did a much better job throwing. So I think the biggest concern for me on defense so far, and obviously we haven't seen a lot of our starting D linemen, we haven't seen Trey Flowers out there with Mike Daniels and Snacks. We haven't seen the sort of trifecta come together out on the field. But I think one thing that I'm concerned with is the pass rush. I think our rush defense has been really good. We've been stuffing them for the most part, making it very difficult for teams to run the ball. But right now we're sort of leaving our secondary on an island because we're just not getting to the quarterback very often.
One thing I wanted to say was I lost it. I had it and then I lost it. Patricia's judgment. I think he's got poor judgment when it comes to challenges. That's twice this preseason. He wanted to challenge a pass interference call, and he lost. I don't think he's got good judgment on the field. I have yet to see him really utilize a time clock management position as like utilizing what to do best with clock management. But when it comes to challenges, he has been very, very not good.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was one of the interesting storylines headed into the season, right? You know, we have this new pass interference being able to be challenged because of the Saints and Rams game in the postseason. And it was sort of the question about how was that going to be implemented? How was that going to end up impacting games? And so far for Matt Patricia, 2 challenges on pass interference calls. Unfortunately, those calls not going in his way. So at least for us, the Lions, it hasn't been a very a positive experience with that new rule. No successful challenges in that regards. But, I think it's definitely a concern. And taking a look at the bigger picture with Matt Patricia, this is, I think, and I've seen a couple articles about this, about him being one of the 4 coaches that are really in the hot seat. And obviously, we've talked about it, especially after last week's game, him, Brady Quinn, all of them being very much so on the hot seat after, we had 2 back-to-back 9-7 seasons. We're doing pretty good. We just regressed to 6-10 last season. If there's another double-digit loss season this year, it's not going to be real good for Patricia. It'll be hard.
How is he supposed to have the respect of the players if he's riding around on a 4-wheeler, if he's injured, if he's not in shape, and he's not a disciplinary coach? How is he supposed to gain the respect of the players? What kind of game is he teaching them? You have to think to yourself, is it just go out there and have fun, or is it go out there and be competitive and try to win the game? To me, I'd much rather play the game to have fun. I understand I'm a bit bigger of a person and I can't always win at what I do. So I just go out there and I just try to have fun with what I do. And if that's what he's teaching the Lions to do, is to go out there and have fun and not take it as seriously, then maybe it can be an interesting season to watch. I watched every single game, almost all time of the games, when they went 0-16. And the thing about it was they made good plays. They were in every game. They lost most games by 4 or less points. There's only one game there's a few games where it was like 6 or 7 points or less. They played competitively and it was entertaining. Although they lost every game, they were in every game. Some of the play I've seen over the last couple of years has been complete poor play. It hasn't been entertaining. I don't know if it's I'm just getting older and my care for sports has gone down, but it just looks like people aren't giving effort out there, and they're not having fun, and they're not enjoying the game that they play.
Yeah, I will say at least this week, the Lions did look a little more energized. Obviously last week with the 31-3 beat down at the hands of the Patriots, it's hard to make the case that there was much of an effort given there just by, how far apart the two teams were. This week, much closer game. The Lions tried to fight through it all. Obviously, the final outcome wasn't great, but it was good to see those guys actually step up and play with seemingly a little bit more urgency, because in that first week, it was reflected on the scoreboard that they were just outclassed. The Patriots came to play, and the Lions didn't. Game
they should play competitively. They're some of the most athletic and in-shape people in the entire world, if not the most in-shape people in the entire world. So they should have that competitive edge to play completely good football. But if you lack areas like, leadership, like either from Stafford or from Matt Patricia, and then you have, 15 coaches and, you don't know who to answer to. I mean, sometimes less is best. If you have maybe 10 coaches, of each area of the game, that would be better. You don't need to have so many people on staff for so many different areas. I'd say cut it down a little bit, and it's just Patricia hasn't shown me leadership skills. He doesn't prove to be a genius yet, like Mike Daniels has said. Mm-hmm. I don't know if the Lions are going to have a good season or a bad season. I was all amped up for them to have a good season, and I was excited. I was following the Detroit Lions diehards. I was following the Detroit Lions fans. I was Twittering, following all these Detroit Lions people, and really, got my jersey out, took a picture of it, started playing Madden football, and used all the Lions players. I was really excited for the season, and now a lot of that excitement has gone away. It's not a sense of urgency to be a Lions fan. It's okay, well, if they're going to play terrible, I don't know how much of this is going to be fun to watch this season, because I found it very hard to watch the first two preseason games. There's just other things that were more interesting. If you understand what I'm saying, I'm not saying that I don't want to, contribute to knowing about the Lions season. It's very important to know that. But when it comes to, entertainment factor, I feel like our show is more entertaining than the Lions.
Well, yeah, and that's one of the things we talked about too in an earlier video, where I was like, I'm not sure what to expect from the Lions. Obviously, last season 6-10, as we mentioned, the season before 9-7. This team has talent, and so far here in the preseason, it's hard to get a read on them. So I'm in that same boat with you, where it's hard to say what type of season the Lions are going to have. Through two preseason games, I still don't know what type of team we're looking at. I don't know how successful they can be. They could easily come out and be as bad as everyone thinks, but they could also come out and surprise us and be good. I don't know based off of these two preseason games. As we talked about, the preseason is largely about making sure that you have the rest of your roster solidified. And I guess that's part of the problem so far with this Lions preseason, is that we haven't seen, the number ones going in a really cohesive unit. So from that regard, it's really hard to gauge what we're looking at. It's been nice to see improvement from the backup guys, but hopefully here, and the game is actually on Friday this week. So we have the Friday matchup with the Buffalo Bills. Even if, again, hopefully Stafford plays so we can get our first look at him and see how that offense is coming along. But, even if Stafford isn't a go, if for some reason they hold him out, at least hopefully we'll get to see more of the starters so we can start to figure that out. Because right now it's a mystery. And, watching definitely enjoy football. But, yeah, watching the backups go at it head-to-head, it's not as exciting as watching, the star players go out there and actually seeing the full offense and the full defense being run, instead of maybe a version that's dialed back. And right now we don't even know if that's the case, because, with having the new offensive coordinator and Darrell Bevell, Matt Patricia supposed to being this genius on defense, it's hard to say if they're waiting to show things for the regular season or if this is just what we can expect moving forward. We really don't know, and it makes it difficult, because if what we've seen through two preseason games is what we can expect all season long, it's definitely going to be a long season. But if they have tricks up their sleeve, if they have some things that they aren't showing us and they're just trying to wait till the start of the season, it would almost be nice if they came out and said that. They're definitely not going to do so, but there's certainly I think a lot left to be figured out this season, and right now, 2 weeks into preseason, we don't have a whole lot of answers.
Yeah, it'll be half a game for the starters on the next preseason game, and as far as the the backups are concerned. I mean, they're gonna trim the roster, cut down some of the players that haven't been performing well, and hopefully when it comes time to suit up for the regular season, they got the best 53-man roster that they can have, and they can play quality football. My hope is that the Lions play good football, entertaining football. Yes, you'd like them to win the division. Yes, you'd like them to win the Super Bowl. But oftentimes, most of the fun that you have during the course of the season isn't in the Super Bowl. Some of it's in the playoffs, but a lot of it's in the regular season.
Yep.
They put too much emphasis on championships, rings, and being the number one best competitive team that there is. It's about having fun, and it's about gaining life lessons. And if you can gain more life lessons, and the Lions can put on football games that teach us stuff about life, then it'll be a little bit more interesting to watch. Maybe the thing with them losing so often for the last 50 years is teaching us that it's not all about winning.
Yeah, no, I think obviously a lot of emphasis is placed on how many Super Bowl trophies each team has and things like that, but it's one of those things where each week you got to come out and be hungry for it, and you got to come work. So it all, you got to take it 1 week at a time. So I think part of the concern is just looking back at last season. Obviously the Lions had a pretty shaky preseason, and they came out flat in week 1 against the Jets. There were some high moments in that game, but overall, that week 1 game against the Jets did not go very well. This year, of course, we have another pretty nice week 1 matchup against the Arizona Cardinals. So definitely what I'm going to be looking for in these next 2 games is just to make sure that they seem to have the right energy heading into the season. We've talked about it, having to start out on the right foot. And to your point, I want to see them start to treat each week like it means something, and to be competitive, because it's about the journey, not just the destination. So if you want to, if your goal is to reach the Super Bowl, each week you have to play the game like that's your goal. So it'll be interesting to see here. Obviously, our next test is going to be up against the Buffalo Bills, so that will be our next video as well. So again, that game is on Friday night, and hopefully we get closer to there. It's only a couple days away since it's Tuesday, but hopefully we'll get word on whether or not we can expect to see Matt Stafford suiting up. Right now, it seems unclear. I know Matt Patricia said in one of his media things about every player should be preparing like they're going to be playing in the game, which doesn't confirm that he'll be there, but hopefully if he is available, then we'll see him in the game. But yeah, we'll see. So Friday night, Buffalo Bills. We'll be back with you with a sort of overview of the game, and hopefully at that time we'll know, so we can either be excited about potentially seeing Stafford play or know that we're going to have to wait even longer to see him. But either way, hopefully before that game kicks off, we'll have confirmation so we can make that part of the video. But just want to thank everybody for tuning in. As always, if you enjoyed the show, please do help the channel grow. Go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe. We're making good progress towards our subscriber count, so any support you can give us, we really do appreciate. And we will be back for episode 12 of season 3 with our preview of the Bills and Lions game. So should be, hopefully, as that dress rehearsal, we'll get to see some of these things that we haven't got to see so far in the first 2 weeks. But until then, I'm Kevin Marheine. He's Joe Wilmot. We will see you during the next video. Bye-bye.